Okay. I show 131. So I am going to introduce Lauren and then turn it over. So our next presenter this afternoon is Lauren Wilson. Lauren's mentor is Tim Braun, and the title of Lauren's presentation is The Reps, a venture in writing for television in the streaming era. Okay, Lauren, if you're ready, we're going to let you take over.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my name's Lauren Wilson. I'm a senior writing and rhetoric student here at St. Edward's. I'm in the creative writing concentration for that major. And this is my thesis that I've been working on since about January of this year. So it's called The Reps. It is a venture in writing for television in the streaming era. So what is the streaming era? According to Deloitte's 12th annual digital media survey trends, 55% of US households have a subscription to at least one streaming service. So streaming services are things like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. They're basically platforms where you can access entertainment via an annual or monthly subscription fee over the internet. So the percentage of households who pay for these services has actually risen an astonishing 450% since 2010. That's about when Netflix came about. So we can just see this gradual rise over time instead of network television, which is how we used to really consume all of our television. And so this disparity between traditional pay TV, i.e. cable, network television, and streamers makes the growing dominance of the medium pretty undeniable. And people seem to now seek out streaming series and streaming services instead of traditional network television because it provides an experience that is convenient, scalable, and personalized. So given this situation, this sort of era in entertainment that we're in, I believe that streamers demand a critical and creative exploration. So to synthesize the creative implications of the rise of streaming services, I decided to create a thesis that allowed me to both research and implement my findings. So therefore, I created a research project where I pulled articles from both trade publications from the entertainment industry, like Variety, Deadline, The Hollywood Reporter, along with traditional academia from professors and scholars in the field who've analyzed this trend over time. And I compiled this into a comprehensive literature review. And then using my findings, I created a 32-page pilot episode of a conceptual streaming series that considers these implications for television. So my conceptual streaming series is called The Reps. I've written one full pilot, it's 33 pages, and a series bible to demonstrate the type of storytelling technique preferred by development executives in this new era when they're trying to produce streaming series as compared to network television. So I've discerned that critical elements in streaming television include tight plot lines, because now with streaming, there's no commercial breaks. So it's pretty linear. So there's no time to really, lollygag in terms of how the story's progressing. It's sort of, and people can remember from episode to episode much better than they could if they're watching one episode a week. So binge watching has really affected storylines in television. I've also noted that most streaming series have strong character development. People are more interested in seeing really detailed, complex characters, not just one-note sort of sitcom-esque characters that we've seen in the past, and also a compelling portrayal of some type of subject matter or thematic material. So with that said, here's my streaming series. It's called The Reps. So it's a half-hour dark comedy series. It takes place in the present day. There's approximately 8 episodes. They're each about they're supposed to be about 30 to probably 35 pages in length. So as I said, it takes place in the present day, and in it, an aimless college grad participates in a pharmaceutical sales rep training program that promises a career with low risk and high reward, so she assumes. After becoming increasingly suspicious of the job she's expected to do, she and other trainees attempt to take down Big Pharma from the inside as amateur whistleblowers. So here's the story from my pilot. Tara Moore, our protagonist, arrives at a multi-week training program for Acer Omni Pharmaceutical Corporation. During the program, held at a resort-style venue in Phoenix, Arizona, she meets 2 other trainees, Hope McCoy and Rudy Marin. She meets them during the opening ceremony of this event. After the ceremony, Hope offers Tara a bet. She wagers that Tara will be dissuaded from working in pharmaceutical sales by the end of the program. Tara's a pretty optimistic person, so she doesn't believe this. She thinks she'll have no issues with becoming like pursuing this career instead of what she originally wanted to do. But over the course of the week, Tara notices the utter incompetence of some of her trainees who are really in it for financial gain alone, and the incompetence of upper level management, along with some of the ethically questionable practices involved with selling pharmaceuticals in the current industry. So feeling dejected, she approaches Hope and Rudy once again. She approaches them in a discreet location, and there Hope and Rudy reveal their plans to work as undercover self-proclaimed whistleblowers. The young trainees agree to work together to create a dossier capable of taking down Acer Omni, the pharmaceutical corporation, as well as the pharmaceutical industry at large, down. So I've created 8 log lines for my 8-episode series. They're, as I said, are going to be about 30 minutes in length. So in episode 1, this is where she, as I mentioned, she meets Hope and Rudy, and that's where they agree to take down Big Pharma and continue with their progress. After that episode, they sort of go back to their respective markets across the country and coordinate their research and what they've seen. And then they use that new knowledge of the pharmaceutical industry to go to DC to gauge lawmakers' theoretical interest in their scheme and using their findings to enact legislation that'll change current practices in the pharmaceutical industry. And then realizing that, a lot of politicians are actually influenced by lobbying and other ends. They realize that they're not going to get the help or achieve what they want to do there. And they really, over the rest of the series arc, kind of more so work as investigative journalists. And they kind of uncover solid proof of Acer Omni's unethical practices, whatever those are. And by the end, no one seems to care, despite all their work, and that's kind of where the comedy comes in. So it is a dark comedy series. There are those like moments of levity, along with sort of the heavier moments in the reality of the current pharmaceutical industry. So we have 3 main characters. This is not who would play the character. This is an idea of who would play a character of this type. This is Beanie Feldstein. She's been in recent films, and I'm a big fan of hers. But our protagonist, Tara Moore, is 22. She's a recent graduate from UC Irvine, where she majored in biology. She had initially thought she wanted to pursue a career as a general practitioner in medicine, but she eventually loses interest in that by the time it's her turn to graduate, and she naively accepts a position as a pharmaceutical sales representative after deciding she really doesn't have any other viable or quick means of both getting a well-paying job that provides her a stable income and a means to pay off her very large student loan debt. And then we have Hope McCoy. So that's who Tara meets at the welcoming ceremony in the pilot episode. Hope is 23, so a little bit older than Tara. She recently graduated from University of Virginia with a degree in political and social thought, and she actually intends to pursue a career in investigative journalism. So she's a pretty confident person. She's motivated to sort of uncover and help people. I mean, her main motivation in life is to really change certain practices in the United States. Along her and Rudy are both really interested in pursuing just a career in social justice along with politics, whatever they can do. And so she and Rudy concoct that plan as they're about to graduate. And so Rudy, her classmate at University of Virginia, co-creates the plan to pose as pharmaceutical sales representatives. And he actually graduated as a sociology major and initially planned to work in community organizing. So as mentioned, the subject matter of my series really deals with the pharmaceutical industry. So this is a quote from 2001 from a executive at a pharmaceutical corporation, and this kind of really encapsulates the state of the industry for the past 20 years. Who wants to be a millionaire? You do the math. There are people in this room who are going to make an ungodly sum of money selling Advair. God bless America. Free enterprise is a wonderful concept. And that really hits the tone of the series. It's both, kind of sad in a way that this is the state of where we are, but at the same time, there's like a deep irony in it. And so Big Pharma really is an existential threat for many Americans. The pharmaceutical industry spends 44% more on lobbying than any other industry in the United States. 93 out of 100 senators accepted money from Big Pharma back in 2016. The flawed US patent system allows for monopolies on certain drugs. We've seen that with insulin, with certain cancer medicines. We saw Katie Porter, one of the representatives from California, recently kind of tackle this issue in Congress. So that's a picture of that right there. And medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in the United States today. So The Reps explores the state of the pharmaceutical industry, the most profitable industry in America, with a critical and comedic lens. The series navigates its complicated, timely subject matter in a way that is both palatable and enjoyable for diverse audiences. So that's my pitch, and that's my thesis.
Great, thank you so much. So please feel free to either unmute yourself and ask your question of Lauren directly, or if you want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to read that for you. And while we give everybody a chance to compose their thoughts, let's give Lauren a quick round of applause. Excellent, excellent. We've already gotten to love it, so you have at least one fan in our chat.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
And that was fantastic, Lauren. Really cool concept. I really like the characterizations. And it reminds me of The Big Short to some degree. You know, there's a really complex business issue that becomes very human thanks to good storytelling. You may not know the answer to this. In your research, did you learn very much about the demographic differences between people who subscribe to cable and people who subscribe for streaming? You may not have gone there. I'm just personally really interested in learning more about, you know, what do we know about streamers compared to other people who do have the means, who can afford to subscribe to cable.
Yeah, I think a lot of households in the United States they still have cable. People haven't fully moved away from cable yet. That's something we're going to see probably over the next decade, and that's really going to be when streaming series kind of dominate the television market as a whole, and people kind of move away from the concept of linear television with commercials and not being able to choose what you want to watch, when you want to watch it. But so I think right now, I don't have the exact figures off the top of my head, but I believe older generations are still more attached to cable. I do think, and younger are more adaptable to technology in general, so they might be more interested in having multiple streaming services, while older consumers tend to have maybe just Netflix, or just a lot of people have Amazon Prime automatically because they want it for the shipping, and then you also have the streaming service. So it's really, there hasn't been enough research done on it in terms of demographics because it's constantly changing like every year. But that's something I definitely want to look into in the future.
Great, thank you for that. Other questions for Lauren? And please, again, feel free to send them to me or just unmute yourself and ask directly.
Lauren, this is Mary Rust, and this is probably something that everybody in the business knows, but I don't. What kind of craft-wise is the difference between a movie and a streaming series? Because I mean, you made it clear the difference between a network series that has commercials and a week between each one. But what would you do differently if you were casting that as a movie and plotting it as a movie versus a set of streaming series?
Right. So in general, streaming series are kind of approached as extended movies. They kind of have the cinematic quality and the character development of traditional films. It's just stretched out to probably, I mean, my show would probably be about 4 hours because it's 30 minutes each, but dramas that are an hour each, then it's like an 8-hour movie is what people like to say. So what I've seen, I mean, in the development process, having worked as a development intern, it's a lot of people, since if you're not working at a streaming service like Netflix or Prime, the person's not submitting it as a streaming service. Some people are like, oh, this would be great for streaming, this pilot you've submitted. We don't have the other episodes. We'd like to know what your plans are, and we'd like to do it for streaming. Some people don't start out with that ambition, but the production company sees it, you know, oh, this is actually better for something like CBS, or we should take this over to Netflix. So it depends on the type of storytelling in the show. And yeah.
So while you're thinking about like storytelling in your show, one of the questions that came through the chat is what sort of structure does one episode have, or what kinds of things need to happen in a single kind of standalone episode? And I want to tack a follow-up onto that. Do you feel like that is different in a streaming platform, like a series like yours intended to be on a streaming service versus kind of traditional network approaches?
Yeah, traditional network sitcoms have strictly 5 acts. You know, there's that cold open teaser in the beginning, inciting incident. Then there's, you know, the resolution. There's a little tag at the end, right after in that last like 30 seconds. So that structure doesn't have to be adhered to. Like in traditional network sitcoms, your each act is going to be a very precise number of pages. It's usually about like somewhere between like 5 and 7, I believe. Whereas if you don't have to hit those commercial breaks, that timing doesn't have to be there. Your acts can be one act can be way longer than the other. For example, in mine, I like to generally write in a 3-act structure rather than a 5-act structure because I feel like that's more indicative of like long form narrative storytelling. So for that, my first act is a bit longer than my second act. My first and my third act are similar in length, and my second's a little bit shorter. So I mean, streaming just opens up a lot more avenues for storytelling, and you can approach it a lot differently than that strict format that network demands.
Great. We got some more questions coming at you, and I'm going to take them a little out of order. One of our journalism faculty members, Jenna Heath, says she loves your investigative reporter character and the reporting and research you've done for this pitch. So at the risk of giving us spoilers, she says, please tell me she doesn't wind up on the train tracks with Zoe Barnes from House of Cards. Would you care to comment on that, Lauren?
I haven't seen House of Cards, so I can't fully comment on that. But I mean, my journalists do end up disappointed in the end, if that's similar in a sense. They're never in true danger, but yeah, they do feel like they kind of wasted their time.
So in the spirit of they feel like they may have wasted their time, do you feel like the changes in genre in a streaming service allow for tackling social justice issues in a different way than networks?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, even just from there's no censorship in terms of language you can use. So a lot of creators can actually tackle really hard hitting topics and subject matter. And they can depict certain things that wouldn't be allowed on network television. Even though HBO is kind of, it's cable, but it's also streaming because they have HBO Max now. Lovecraft Country is a good example of that because that probably wouldn't be able to be shown on network television because of its gore, because of its use of certain language. So I feel like there's definitely, it just, in general, streaming provides more avenues for different types of stories. I'm really happy about this era because there's just so many places to have your shows develop. There's so many options. And I feel like it's much more inclusive now. There's still a long ways to go, but I feel like this new era really paves the way for more inclusive story and diverse stories.
Well, I think you set up our next question perfectly. What are your next steps? Are you headed to a streaming service?
I'm not with this project. I'd be interested to do that and like maybe continue writing more projects in the future. I don't have explicit plans to do anything further with this at the moment. I'm really focused on continuing with my internships and development over the next semester, and then maybe I intend to kind of both work on writing projects on the side. So I'm continuing to work on that along with like working at an agency or management company because I kind of have interest in both right now, like both supporting writers or being the writer myself. So it's two paths and I kind of want to pursue both.
Great. Okay, I've stopped sharing your screen because I would like to turn this over to your mentor, Tim Braun. Tim, do you have anything you would like to share with us? And don't forget to unmute yourself, just as a reminder.
I think that Lauren is selling herself a little bit short on this. She's been working extremely hard, not only throughout the course of the summer, but her research has been impeccable. I learned a lot myself working with her on this one. One thing that does not come out in this presentation is how tight, how good her script is, and her ability to use dialogue and humor to bring up this dark topic, how she's able to use dark humor in such a weird way. In a good way, excuse me. And it's something that not only sticks out, it's part of Lauren's voice, and she's had several classes with me. It's truly an exceptional script to the point of where one of Lauren's classmates was in the hallway. I said, come here, you've got to come in here, Caitlin. You're gonna watch Lauren's presentation. Yeah, so we did a little dance. I thought it was just an exceptional project. I absolutely am thrilled and tickled and very, very proud to be your mentor.
Thank you so much, Tim. And Lauren, we'll wait and give folks and see if there's any last minute questions, but it seems like a missed opportunity if I don't ask you, what are one or two things we absolutely need to be streaming across all these various platforms? What would you send us into the weekend to watch?
So the most recent thing I actually binged was the show Queen's Gambit on Netflix. It's a really good show. It's a really good example of just what streaming is. That's really just one long movie, that show, because it was written by people who traditionally worked in film. So I definitely recommend that show. It's about, if you don't know what it's about a female chess player. It's set in the 1960s, and she kind of struggles with addiction and imposter syndrome and a variety of other things in this like very male dominated sport at the time. And it's really insightful to watch. Along with that, again, these aren't necessarily like explicitly streaming, but they're kind of streaming shows. On HBO Max, Lovecraft Country is great. I May Destroy You is also very good. It deals with sexual assault and one survivor's journey to recovery after that incident. I think that's kind of just like indicative of my taste in general, which is really just like stuff or comedy or, I don't know, thrillers that have a social commentary incorporated into it. But yeah, those are my recommendations.
Excellent, thank you. And because you're a writing and rhetoric major, we can't miss the opportunity to say that The Queen's Gambit is adapted from a novel published in the early 80s. Thank you, Dr. Clements, for the shout out to both, so you can enjoy the book and the adaptation. Okay, I think those are all of the questions we had for you, Lauren. So one more time, feel free to unmute yourself. Round of applause. Send them via the screen. Excellent work, Lauren. Lots of bravos coming in for you.